Is July 18th, 2023. Dr. Deane Byrd and I are here. I got to get my hair right because I don't know what just happened there, but I'm Dr. Kenya and this is Dr. Deane, and we are here to share with you today. We want to have a juicy conversation about AI,
Yep.
implications on the masses, but also how it changes the way we within our field work. So, Deanne, I want to start off by telling you that this A came for me became top of mind throughout the last week because of some of the questions that came in last week when we were live, and then an article came out by Jacob Nielsen that talked about how AI can improve employee productivity by up to 66%. And that's huge. And this didn't just cover um, professional roles. It covered people who were also in manufacturing settings and that sort of thing. So, what are your thoughts about this whole
Yeah.
topic?
So I did. I saw that article about the efficiency improvements, productivity improvements, but he also put out another one really talking about how UXers tend to lag and flash back to his .com days where we were all stuck on the software applications and focus on that and didn't move to the web quite as fast as the industry where everything was going. So he's saying we're looking at that same sense of urgency from an
Mm,
AI perspective and how UX fits in there. So yeah, it's really interesting. That article was interesting. I've seen there's a lot of talk now. I know you and I have done plenty of talking about, hey, we got to start shifting the way we look at things. We
mhm.
both come from, I don't know, Kenny, you can talk about yours. I think we've always had a little bit of an interest from back in the day without aging myself. My dissertation was all around expert systems and how do you represent that knowledge that goes into those. That's today AI. James Lester, early pioneer, was on my committee. So it's just a fascinating area.
I think that my dissertation, which I completed back in '06, was also around automated decision aids, which essentially what AI is. It's a decision aid or a tool to help augment your thinking, your action, that sort of thing. Um, but I looked at trust and reliability. So give me a sense of how reliable the decision aid or decision support is, and also present it in different ways so that I can understand what goes into
Yep.
basically what goes into making the sausage so that I can understand whether or not I want to eat it. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
and in that, how does that impact my trust? So am I more likely to take its suggestion to help me be more effective in what I'm doing or not? And I think that when we think about AI today, we're talking a lot about large language models.
Yes.
Is the data comprehensive? You know, does it cover all scenarios around how that data is going to be consumed? But
Mhm.
I don't think we're doing enough to talk about or focus on, um, is it trustworthy? You know, does it work in a way that I can feel comfortable
Right.
with making the decision to consume it or not?
Right. Yes. How's it fit in that flow as well from a UX perspective?
Yes.
That's, I think, things we need to look at. But yeah, the whole trustworthiness piece, I think we're hearing a lot of that out
Mhm.
in the media lately, and
Mhm.
even politicians getting in on it. So it is all around. I liked your analogy, sausage, but what goes into making the sausage, but more importantly, is the end result sausage. Is the
Favorite
product that
sausage, right? Because I need to know.
and that was kind of what I focused on back, 20 something years ago was how do you make sure that you get sausage in the end, with all the inputs you get. So I think that's a big thing that people just have to overcome, and the technology is going to have to kind of prove itself out, I think. And it's doing that, as you can see from
Mhm.
the article. They're always going to be there are always going to be those concerns. I think somebody asked last week about what do
Mhm.
you think about all these students using these technologies to complete homework and papers and projects, and
Right.
you and I talked about, well, that train's already going.
That's
It's hard
yep,
to stop the train, but it's valid concerns. Will people
absolutely.
lose certain kind of, kids, their reasoning and problem solving abilities? But at the same
Absolutely.
time, does it help them with those? They're kind of two
Mhm.
ways of looking at it. But yeah,
Yeah, you think about how can it expand the realm of what, so I can only come up with so many creative ideas on my own, and does it expand the capability that I may have
yeah,
around being creative or understanding the realm of possibilities, even if I've lost the capability of thinking through the process of making the decision, does it give me more options?
right.
And, exercising which option to take, maybe it's going to help me in that way. Like you said, it's the train has left the station. It's inevitable that students are going to consume it. We've got to think differently about how we teach students, and I think that it's just the way we learn has changed and that sort of thing. And this is just one of those things that has changed along with it.
Right. And I think we'll start seeing things come into play that try to balance out the use of those tools to accomplish things. And, you
Hmm.
know, teachers, I've already heard about, apps and things
Hmm.
being developed, that help them kind of know when there's plagiarism and other things going
Exactly.
on where they're not doing the work. But either
Exactly.
way,
So I want
it's,
to go back to a point you just made.
yeah,
You said how UX, people within UX have historically been laggards, it sounds like, in the adoption of or in embracing the
you do.
importance of the discipline of things like human factors within the technology space. Um, I have a theory, but where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I want to hear your theory. I really don't know. I think when you have a shift and we're humans, we
Mhm.
tend to, change, be reluctant to change, and we become very skilled in certain areas. And now we have a whole paradigm shift. We've
Mhm.
got to start and we got to start looking at AI and how it's going to play into the things we work on as human factors and user
Yes.
experience specialists. So
Yes.
I don't know. I'd love to hear your theory.
So my take is when you go back to our formal training,
Hmm.
it's about systems and systems thinking. So AI is just one piece within that entire puzzle. And if you go back even further in our training, it's rooted in systems that are physical systems as well as software
Historically,
systems.
yep.
Yeah. So historically, I think a lot of it, because we're talking about, the web, and then software, and then AI, which are in the digital realm.
Hmm.
I think because we're rooted in that physical, that transfer of value or the importance that we see in evaluating that just as much as the entire ecosystem, which I
Yes.
think is the benefit of human factors, that can sometimes work against us in those sorts of situations. But when we do make that shift, I think that our broad lens is more effective than people who are just focused on AI, just focused on the physical environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. And I think, maybe things will change. I know you and I are out here preaching to
Yes.
clients about how where human factors we are trying to come early to the table. I think part of it's because
Mhm.
we did, back in the graduate school days. But it's definitely time to, with everything we
Mhm.
do, with all the any research, any product, any client engagement, is to consider that machine learning AI component and where it
Mhm.
can play in all of this. Go back to the article you cited earlier. There are a lot of efficiencies to be
Yeah.
gained, and I think we should look at AI both in terms of being consumers, like we should be adopting, some of these
Yes.
to help with our work, to help with our analysis. So. you need to be an adopter to better understand the technology as well. But then, consumers and champions for it within the organizations and within projects. Like, we're not saying everyone's job's got to disappear. They're just, you can really contribute to efficiencies, productivity, and kind of those delighters.
Yeah, and also accuracy. You want,
yes,
higher quality, fewer problems or issues to arise. That is where we have to look at where the technology can do things better than we can.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I like to liken what you just said around being consumers versus being producers. And so when we look at who we are and how we're trained, we have the opportunity to consume for the work that we do, like helping us accelerate the process of transcription.
Yes.
But then as producers, we have the opportunity to look at some of those cognitive processes and how do we create AI that factors in the human and how we process information cognitively.
Right. And we do. I know we've tried to do that lately and tried to, write newsletter articles about it, but it's an exciting area to embrace. I definitely understand all the concerns with the potential biases in the data, the trustworthiness, but that'll kind of have to prove itself one way or the other over time, depending on the system. But definitely HFers, and I wish some were on here right now to start the conversation.
But question perspectives. But to your point, though, I think that proving out is something that can take place faster or quicker if there are more social science professionals or experts on the teams creating or producing AI, because you then start to get into the data that goes into the model, the large language model, for example, in generative AI. And do we look at the makeup of that data? A social scientist is going to be able to tell you whether or not your data is comprised of a representative sample.
Right.
And does it make sense in that realm, where it's necessary to look at that. But too many, even back in the day when I was working on a team that was looking at machine learning and that sort of thing, everyone focused on the data scientist and didn't necessarily think about taking that step back and looking at, do we have the right training data set? What is that training data set comprised of in terms of representation and generalizability and that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where UX can come in strong, is when you're talking about the analysis of that day. Even think about a lot of the smart technology out there, and it's leveraging conversation, it's natural dialogue as part of its AI to sift through things. There are a lot of things a researcher can come in and look at and kind of catch from the get-go. I think actually, I have to say, Amazon actually did pretty good at this when it came to Alexa, and I don't want to start any. They had researchers, UX type people in there constantly, from my understanding, sifting through that data along with the engineers. So they were collecting feedback as the system was learning, and they were using that to help the system learn. And if you have Alexa or any of them, I happen to have Alexa, what, she's going to answer me now, but your Echo Dots, they've gotten the improvement over the past however many years has been, to me, astronomical. At least that's been my experience. But I have seen write-ups where they said there's a lot of attention given from the experience, the UX perspective of that. Same thing, IBM. I think that article I mentioned, it's been a while ago now, that I shared with you, where they made sure that they had other people other than data scientists and engineers in the room from the beginning to help develop some of this
exactly
stuff.
Exactly. And you just brought up something that goes back to the human component in that ecosystem, is the issues with Alexa always listening. And so when we think about the limitation of the technology, I see it as a limitation, is that it has to always be quote unquote on
Yeah.
in order
Yeah.
to listen out. But when you think about it from the human or the consumer side, we have to think about, do you educate people that on the fact that that is occurring?
Right.
In that, do they understand the implications, which means it's potentially always listening,
Yes. And collecting. Yeah.
collecting? And does that also mean that you now have to be vigilant around what you're saying in the same room? And as humans, we can forget when
Yeah.
we have to do things where we have to be hyper vigilant for periods of time. So when you think about the use or the deployment of systems like this, there's a lot more than just, does it work?
Yeah.
You know, can it show reliability in terms of its performance over time? Yeah, but you have to also think about the consumer, and from their context, what does that mean? And I
Right.
think we forget that sometimes, especially when you don't have that social scientist, that human factors, that UX person in the room that's focused on those sorts of considerations.
Yep. Yep. And shifting gears a little bit, and this is what usually gets me excited when we work with clients, is what if they're, taking AI and leveraging it in almost everything, everywhere you can that makes sense. So what I mean by that is when you start looking at the task flows, the workflows,
Mhm.
like a lot of our research is all about, okay, what are the things people need to get done, who's involved, what resources do they need, or are they using, what tools are they using. Well,
Mhm.
it also provides this opportunity when you think about when you get those journeys and workflows going, together in that vision. I To me, where we bring some of the best value is to be able to go, hey, right here's a point where we could really pick up on some efficiencies and
Yes.
delight the users by
Yes.
like kind of introducing as a tool
Yes.
for help. Um, we it, Back to your transcription idea, that's what happened. They looked at, hey, what are people doing sometimes in these meetings, these usability
How
sessions?
can we accelerate that?
How can we accelerate that? And
Mhm.
and that was identified as, hey, we can provide a transcript, we can provide kind of a summary of that
Mhm.
video. What's that save us, Kenya? I mean, sometimes if you have a
Hours,
2-hour session,
hours.
back
But
forth.
also, not only the transcription part is the savings, but it's also now you have word cloud. So frequency of
Yes,
terms, where those terms fit within the context of that transcript.
yes,
Maybe some insights, some general insights where the AI is applied to then tell you, here are some things that I can arrive at or conclusions I can produce based on what I'm seeing in this data. I mean, that's huge.
it is. It's huge. It is huge. And that's where I think back to those articles and that blog post I think I sent
Mhm.
you in the chat was
Mhm.
going like we need to shift paradigms a little bit,
Absolutely.
and start considering these things in all of our, any project you're
In
working on.
any
This
part of our
isn't,
work.
yeah,
But the key to what you just said, it all starts with a task and workflow analysis.
yes,
And going back to what we do for clients, we can't arrive at whether or not. So, in looking at clients that are eager to deploy AI in their organizations or in their tools, you can't jump the gun and shove it down people's throat and force them
right,
to use AI. You've got to first step back and understand, what is their workflow? What are those tasks within the workflow? And where
exactly.
do I introduce the technology to help supplement, augment, whatever it might be, what they're doing in that particular task?
Yes, right, exactly. And they don't even have to really fully be aware of it. I mean, it's like there's some things
Right.
AI just lends
That's
itself to,
right.
and they just, wow, this has just become easier. Life has become easier.
I
So,
mean, if you think about if you're browsing on a website and you are shopping for items and then it gives you suggestions on other items that might be similar or that might be of interest, don't even have to be similar. Because of the style of what you chose here, these might be items that you're interested in. Introducing that into my workflow of shopping is really helpful because it might open up ideas about things that I can consider that I hadn't thought of.
right.
And that also speaks to the fact that we can't be scared of AI because it's in a lot of the things that we're using today.
Yes. It's been around. I think that's one of the things I might have said last week is it's actually been around for a really
Mhm.
long time. It's just getting better. It's more on trend right now that, and things opening up like, some of the tools that are out there and we're hearing about. So I get it's
Absolutely.
accelerating, but we've had it in our lives for a very long time.
For some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go any further, if we have anyone that's with us right now, feel free to leave a message in the chat. We want to give you a shout out. Let us know who you are and where you're from. And in the meantime, we're going to continue the conversation, but we definitely want to give you a shout out. So talk to me about where you see the opportunity in terms of how AI can help you in what you're doing today. So you talked about transcription. They're now saying that it can help with design work. Do you see that as an opportunity?
I definitely think it's an opportunity. I don't think you're ever going to take the human out of the equation, or we hope not. I can't see that, but
Mhm.
there's no doubt about it. They're already coming up with so many different types of design tools, visual, especially on the visual front, that people like. I'm not a visual designer, but I can go out there and grab
Mhm.
some things. So I definitely can. The systems are getting smarter and smarter. Why we already have templates for certain kinds of things, so why couldn't
Mhm.
you leverage AI? You've even seen some of the, or maybe you didn't see that article, but like um, conversational natural dialogue that
Mhm.
even developers or some of them starting to use where to do really simple applications. You and I could start doing some of them.
Mhm.
Again, I am not making any big claims here. I mean,
No,
but I
I get it.
have read super.
Yeah, we're not trying to take the human out of the loop completely.
No.
And it's all about augmenting what you do to make it faster, to open up the breadth of possibilities, to, gain some level of accuracy where you don't have it, that kind of thing.
Right, just the ease. Yeah, yeah, some
Yeah,
of those. But so I can see if they can do it for coding, they can do it from a front end,
yeah, yeah.
perspective as well. But and that is fascinating to me that you can now potentially have for really quick scripts or something, like we might want to write for the technology is getting where you can use natural dialogue to get there for
Mhm.
basic things, So I think that was the article you mentioned earlier. It talked about what was it, 136% increase for
Yes,
developers who were using this
yes,
technology. That so it's not taking that developer's job.
yes,
It's just probably relieving them from a lot of those mundane and small development tasks. So
yes, and alleviating
wish we had one
everything.
here.
Exactly. Something that I read a few weeks back was about the fact that the way that we search, like the search tools that we use,
Mhm.
like Google or within applications themselves, query capabilities are going to have to change where people expect that they can use natural language or speak into a system and get back their result
Yes.
from the database. And that moves the needle tremendously from the standpoint of getting the value out of a system,
Right.
especially a tool that's going to provide you with business intelligence or data that's visualized. that can move the needle tremendously. But what that also means is that we've got to understand what we're looking for, and the
Mhm.
system's got to be smart enough to be able to
Right.
recognize what you're asking for.
Right. And that goes back into AI. The tools are only as good as what's put into them. And
Mhm.
again, that's where I see UXers, human factors people, being really important,
Mhm.
having a seat at the table
Mhm.
to talk about that natural dialogue, to talk about their user segments and expectations
Mhm.
around where it would come in play. What kind of language they're using. Think about prompt. What is it? Prompt engineering. Whatever.
Mhm.
That stuff like that's gonna be huge. How do you help people with
Absolutely.
that if they're using these systems? What's kind of that dialogue that's going to make your system most accurate by
Absolutely.
yeah that's
And
really
I think we have to also consider cultural ergonomics, which is a
that's
thing. And how do non-native speakers differ from native English speakers, and what implications does that have on the system's performance
right
when
right
they interact with it? I mean, we have so many things to consider in terms of understanding what's in a system. So if you don't understand enough about what data the system houses, or the power of the data that's in a
hmm
system,
hmm
you don't know the realm of possibilities around what you can ask for.
right exactly
So
yeah
it's that kind of thing where, there's so much, and that goes back to the transparency around what's in it, what went into the sausage, to then understand, can I expect, or what's the realm of possibilities, and how do I take advantage of it?
right and trust it yep
Yeah, and
yeah
there's almost a need for that. To me, sounds like a new discipline.
it does. And you
Like,
know what? That was one of Nelson's articles I was talking about. He's like, who's
mhm,
going to take, and I think this was just a week or two ago, he releases,
mhm,
he's like, who's going to be the me of
mhm,
AI in user experience and human factors?
mhm.
So back to what you're saying, it is almost like a new, new
Absolutely.
discipline. But and
Discipline.
I love the stories we have. About where we were able to go on a client site or in our previous lives, and just by studying the people involved,
Mhm,
looking at the tools being used, looking at
mhm,
the interactions that were occurring, and then identifying areas. We have some really good stories, where
mhm.
there were areas identified like, hey, you know what? If you can minimize having the human right here, because this
Yeah,
is a pain point and this is a
yeah.
problem, is there a way of doing that? And we did introduce AI in a couple of places, machine learning AI, where just based on human factors research, user experience research, and being able just to put that flow together, put a
Mhm,
picture together, find those hiccups, those pain points where there are a lot of problems, whether it be errors or just user frustration,
mhm.
and invoicing. People,
Yeah,
practice management people forgetting their time and losing. I think it's 33% of revenue with some of the research showed
mhm.
certain practices, certain kinds of offices, just based on losing track of time and activity.
Even time tracking in and
That
of itself. Do I really need to time track, or is there a way for you to capture that time without me even knowing?
right, and using that machine learning or the
Yeah.
AI to go tickle you. Here, let us.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think about it in terms of like the cost savings little device that my car insurance
yes,
company uses to track whether or not I should save on my car insurance. But it's always tracking what you're doing, and you're driving on the back end. But at some point, you have to go into the app and do, at least with my insurance, you have to go in and do some things. And to me, that's it's disruptive in a bad way, because I feel like, if you're tracking things, can we get to a place where that what you're tracking about me is not because I'm in the passenger seat, but because I'm in the driver's seat.
Right.
Where do I have to go in and make sure that I rectify things and that sort of thing? So we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
We're not there
You know
yet.
what I mean? We're
Yeah.
not there yet. But I also think about all the value that AI can bring in systems where you're looking at being able to use that system to make better decisions,
Yes.
and how today we don't always know what the decisions are in our workflow. And so when we think about that AI technology helping us to make better decisions, give me some sort of barometer on what each decision, the pros and the cons, or weigh each decision against the other
Mhm.
to help me understand. And now as a worker or an employee, train me on how to decipher the pros and the cons and
Right.
what decisions are best based on the circumstances, that kind of thing.
And what are you thinking? Like, what are your? I know I talk a lot about the research and the flow and
Mhm.
how I think HFers and user experience researchers need to inject themselves,
Mhm.
in that, or inject the AI thought into their process. So it's not just us
Mhm.
get a seat at the table, but ramping up to get a seat at the table. How
Mhm.
where do you where do you see research going when
Mm,
you think about where how do we start getting that seat at the table?
that's a good question. So I think it starts with the research, the discovery work that we do in terms of understanding. When you start with the user's workflow, their task flow, analyzing what are they doing and why, the inputs, the actions that they perform, and the outputs of their action, when you start to understand those pieces, then you can start to extract out of that where is that opportunity. But you have to have an understanding of what AI can do. What is the realm of possibility within AI? How do you serve up those different capabilities? You have to understand all of that before you can actually provide recommendations. If I
Recommendation.
look at, I've had experience with several clients that have looked at um, tools that provide you with a next best action. So if that tool is going to help me, okay, so if the application just in and of itself is to help me serve an end user to solve a problem, answer a question,
Hmm.
and then you incorporate a next best action capability, that capability is helping me to be or to deliver more value for me to be more effective. But I've got to understand, going back to the HF person that worked on that system, I've got to understand where does that fit in their workflow? So where does that next best action? Because I didn't call you to get the next best action. I called you to get an answer, user or the end consumer. So first of all, answer my question or serve my need. Then that next best action can come in to help me. But what does that look like? Is it, what are the things that it should cover versus not? So all of that work of understanding that, I think, is where we as UX researchers, human factors professionals, need to start to look at the breadth of possibilities of what the capability or
Yep.
the technology can do. But then where does that fit, or where are the opportunities for it to fit within our consumers' workflows?
Yes, which is the fun part. To
Yeah.
me, it's the fun. Even if it's like, throw it out there, see what data,
Yeah.
they already have. Because I've been surprised by how much data a lot of organizations have in that in-house that they can leverage for some
Mhm.
of these things that they don't even think about.
And that's
So
a really interesting situation to be in, is when you have data that you use just to do business, and then that data becomes your IP, and
yes,
you can put a wrapper around it and make it a solution.
yes,
That's a really good place to be.
it really
And
is.
it opens up so many opportunities.
It does. And one thing, what I know I wanted to talk about this before we do wrap it up, is like
Mhm.
overcoming the anxieties. I mean, you can't ignore that there are a lot of people that have a lot of anxieties around AI, where it's going. Is it going to take their job? Is it going to take over the world?
Mhm.
How do you overcome that? I know that you've had recent experience, but I think maybe that issue was more the AI was problematic because they already had too many tools, and now you're just introducing
Mhm.
another tool versus making the AI fit.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but what has your experience been on that trust front, or
Hmm.
if you've had any yet?
So I don't think it's been a situation yet where it's about the trust factor. I think that that's something that we have to understand how to bake it in to these solutions. Like, how do you ensure that trustworthiness is a goal for that? So, just as much as it's performant and accurate, trustworthy should be another aspect of or a success metric for your implementation.
Yes, a metric. I like. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a metric. And I think that when we talk about trustworthiness, then you have to step back and say to yourself, who's my audience? What are they using this for? What are the implications of them not trusting it or it doing something that takes them off the rails?
Yes.
Like, you've got to understand all those things before you can say, sure, it's trustworthy, or sure, I can create something that's trustworthy. You've got to understand their mental model
Yeah.
and their context around using it. And do they perceive, like, am I going to run off the road if I listen to or comply
Right.
with what AI is telling me? Or is it just that I'm going to make a small error that I can recover from?
Right.
That's going
So
to have a lot to do
consider
with the
that's a
trust.
good one. Recovery. That's actually a good one whenever you're designing a system, is that whole, yeah, recovery process.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be things will hiccup. But I like and the seamless integration of it, I think, is also really, really important to people. And
Mhm.
I really am thinking about one of your recent experiences, where just introducing, even if it's useful, an
Mhm.
AI for, just to say you have, isn't a
Mhm.
good
Not
thing,
right.
because then it won't be
Yeah.
adopted. It's really breaking out that
That's the
workflow.
key. And
Yeah.
you're also investing in something that's not it's not time. Not that it's not ready, it's not time, because implementing capability that takes your user further than where they are today, and if today's current state is not in a place where they're ready to consume that,
Right.
then it's really not useful. It's like if I'm trying to sew for the first time, I might have to start with that little, remember the little square? You
Yes.
stitch all around the square. Don't try to get me to make a pleated skirt. Let me start out with the little square because I'm not ready yet. I might get there, but first I've got to be able to master maybe I'm using a sewing machine or
Right.
manual tools, but I've got to master that first before you take me on to something that's more complex,
Yes.
but also more useful. I have to be able to master stage one first.
Right, right. There's that. And can't you, whatever you're going to introduce it into your sewing machine versus making you go
Yes.
to another room, to finish a process. So that
Exactly.
integration. Yeah.
Exactly. And is it just a part of me interacting with that machine or tools or whatever it is versus now I have to go somewhere else. And to your point, don't introduce the technology into one of your tools if you already expect me to use multiple tools.
Right. Right.
I am already frustrated that I have multiple tools. Figure out how to solve that first problem, then introduce something that's going to extend my capability,
Yeah. Yep.
because it goes back to
It does.
adoption. Don't
It
invest
does.
all that time and money in something that I may not adopt because I've already got so much on my plate.
Exactly. And it's not seamlessly
Mhm.
working with the things I have to use.
Mhm.
So you're not making my life easier. I'm not going to adopt it. We
Yeah.
are all like that.
Oh,
We
absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is on tap for the week? What's going on with the animals? I got to ask before
Okay.
we How are they doing?
Let's see. So for those on here who don't know, I have a small hobby horse farm. which is just a lot of work. So right now, all that's on tap is keeping these. It's like over 100-degree
I was just going to
heat
ask
I
what
think
the
all week.
temperature.
So yeah, we're just trying to keep everyone cool with fresh water and
And the haze in the air, which is getting
yeah, we're under that air quality alert. Yeah, that's
old.
still the smoke coming from Canada, I think, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes, I believe so. I
yeah,
believe
yeah.
so. So, what do you think about education in human factors programs around? What do you think we can do to better educate our next generation of human factors professionals when we think about AI technologies? What are some things that we could potentially do differently or introduce into the classroom?
Well, I should switch this and put this question back on you because you're
Ah,
the adjunct
touche.
professor of not me. So that's a good question though. But I think in general, with human factor, whatever, I know there are a variety of degrees out there. Human factors or other degrees in computer science. But
Yeah.
in general, I think programs need to be on top of current technology direction and trends and have very practical projects and courses in the universities. But I mean, aside from just making sure of that, and I also think HFers should have to go to a few of those computer science courses, not to learn the code, but yeah, those more practical courses. I know
Yeah.
the state has them. We're
Yeah.
just learning about that stuff, but and the programs have to be willing to, you know.
Yeah.
But
So
I don't know now. You're
when
closer.
I teach HCI to software engineering students, I try to make sure, I used to, but there wasn't enough time in the semester to bake in a book where we read the chapters and then kind of went through dialogue and exercises around trustworthy AI and understanding that there are major limitations, and this book did a really good job of illustrating those limitations, which would allow students to understand that just implementing it is not okay. It's first understanding how will the person perceive the utility and how will they perceive how to use the technology, and then does it actually live up to those expectations. And it was really helpful to have those conversations. But to your point, I think we could do a better job of looking at education differently in terms of having more cross-departmental courses that
Yeah.
require students from those different disciplines to kind of cross over into a different department and take those courses without them being hamstrung around, do you have the prerequisites for this course?
Right.
More so, can you bring value in terms of your perspective, but also can you get value out of it, understanding better what your partners or how your partners look at that particular subject?
Yep. Yeah.
I think we have a huge missed opportunity by not taking advantage of that. But I think with the pressures of where secondary education is right now, and I think that we will be forced to look at education different, and what AI and things like ChatGPT
How
are
it's going
doing.
to change it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to take us to a different place in terms of how we look at education. So
Yeah.
I know it is in middle and high school. So my kids tell me all the time about how, people are using it, how they're getting access to it, that kind of thing. So they are, taking
It's
advantage.
happening, whether
It-
it's a good or bad, I guess is,
That's right.
yeah.
Absolutely right. Well, we are at the bottom of our 45 minutes, and I want to say have a wonderful, wonderful week, Dr. Deanne, and I will see you next week, and we will get on some other topic.
Yep.
And please stay safe with the haze and the heat, and I will see you next time.
All right. Bye, Kenya.
Take care. Bye.